Alexander Mogilny was a young soldier trapped in a system that controlled everything. Then, he made a choice. Almost no one survived. This is the story of his escape through Stockholm, and the Sabres' desperate plan to get him out alive. One wrong move, and the world would have never learned his name. Alexander Mogilny's fight for freedom began in the spring of 1989. He was only 20 years old, fresh off a gold medal at the World Championship in Stockholm, but he felt like a prisoner inside the Soviet system. He was a soldier in the Red Army Club, a place where Viktor Tikhonov's strict rules controlled every hour of his day. Even things like housing, travel, and training were locked behind military discipline, giving him almost no control over his own life. By then, Soviet officials already suspected he might flee. Earlier that year, they had even demoted him to the junior team during a tour in the United States, keeping him as far away from any chance to defect as possible. But Stockholm gave him one final opening. He made a secret phone call to the Buffalo Sabres, the team that drafted him, and told them the time had come. Sabres GM Jerry Meehan and scout Don Luce flew to Sweden immediately, knowing the risks if they failed. Their first meeting happened inside a team hotel. It was quick, quiet, just enough to confirm that Mogilny was serious. A second meeting was planned at his agent's apartment, but a warning came through the phone. Someone was watching. The group changed plans and moved the meeting to a mall, hoping to blend into the crowd while still giving Mogilny a way out. When Mogilny and his agent finally approached the Sabres car, panic hit. Several men stepped into view behind them. Mogilny dove into the back seat and slammed the door while Luce spotted the figures in the mirror. It looked like Soviet officials were closing in. Luce pulled away fast, starting a 3-day stretch that felt more like a spy mission than a hockey rescue. The group switched hotels every night. Meehan gathered the documents needed for travel, while the others planned each move carefully. Luce drove Mogilny through back roads to stay hidden. At one point, Mogilny tried to call home from a public phone booth. The call cut twice, and Mogilny rushed back to the car, shaken, saying, "They know where we are." At times, he worried they might turn a corner and find him. And no one slept more than a few minutes at a time. Reports later claimed the military viewed his defection as desertion. His family faced questions and pressure from officials, and he feared the fallout would reach them. There was no guarantee he would ever see them again. Even then, he kept going, convinced this was the only way to keep moving forward. When the group headed toward the airport, things tightened again. A newspaper had leaked details of the defection, printing their names and describing the operation. The only thing left secret was their current hotel, which likely kept them from being intercepted. Under heavy secrecy, they boarded a flight to New York. At JFK Airport, American officials pulled Mogilny aside for questioning, which was standard for high-profile defectors. Officials granted him political asylum soon after. The Soviet government lashed out in its state press, accusing the Sabres of stealing him. Mogilny was finally safe. By early October, a U.S. visa sat in his hands, and he showed it off proudly. It felt like the first real proof that he was actually free. Years later, he summed it up saying that he didn't see any future in the Soviet system, and he believed that the United States offered him a real life. It took courage most people never have to use, but that moment shaped everything he became. When Alexander Mogilny landed in North America in 1989, everything around him felt fast, open, and unfamiliar. He was no longer surrounded by teammates or officials, and for the first time, he had to build a life without anyone guiding his daily steps. Now he was a Buffalo Sabre, wearing the number 89 as a tribute to both his draft slot and the year he broke free. It was a small gesture from the team, but it meant more to him than they knew. His first NHL moment became a symbol of everything he hoped to build. On his very first shift, in his very first game, he touched the puck, took a step, and scored. 20 seconds into his debut, the underdog who risked everything stunned an entire arena. The crowd erupted, players stared, and suddenly this quiet young man who spoke only a little English looked like a player who belonged on a top line. Buffalo fans fell for him instantly and cheered every time he touched the ice. But off the ice, everything felt harder. North America moved fast, with routines and choices he never had faced before. Even simple moments, buying food, picking out clothes, trying to follow conversations, reminded him how far he was from home. He had studied English, but speaking it in real time felt like jumping into cold water. His support system came from a familiar place. His friend and agent, Sergei Fomichev, stayed in Buffalo with his wife, helping Mogilny with meals, errands, and team logistics. They became his support structure, steadying him while he tried to rebuild his life from scratch. But even with their help, the isolation stayed with him. Every quiet moment made him wonder if he would ever see his parents again, or if his escape had separated them for good. On the ice, teammates noticed how easy the game looked for him. Coaches talked about his speed, saying he hadn't even begun to use it fully. In preseason games, he made end-to-end rushes that left people shocked. In practice, his effortless speed stood out immediately. Language didn't matter. He saw the game clearly, understood the flow, and found open ice without guidance. Still, he needed time to grow. The defensive structure in Buffalo felt restrictive to a player trained in free-flowing Soviet hockey. In Russia, the game encouraged creativity, angles, and offensive rhythm. In Buffalo, the focus leaned toward responsibility and caution. Mogilny admitted he struggled with the adjustment. He wanted to attack, not hold back. He wanted movement, not structure. But he kept learning, kept adding to his game, and kept finding ways to show his talent. His rookie season ended with 15 goals and 43 points in 65 games. Modest numbers on the stat sheet, but encouraging signs for someone navigating a new life and a new league. Each season, he took a noticeable step forward. 30 goals in his second year, 39 in his third. As his confidence grew and the game began to slow down for him, everything started to click. He finally looked like a player breaking through. Then came a moment that showed just how quickly he was adapting. On a road trip to Toronto, he missed the team bus, but instead of panicking, he simply drove himself and still beat it there. It was a small story, but it revealed everything. He solved problems, he adjusted fast, and he never waited for someone else to clear his path. The fans in Buffalo made him feel welcome in a way he didn't expect. They admired his fearlessness on the ice and respected the risks he took to get there. Every cheer helped chip away at the loneliness he had carried from the moment he walked away from the Soviet team hotel. The underdog who fled the KGB was becoming a hometown favorite, and he hadn't even reached his full potential yet. And then something changed. Mogilny wasn't just fitting in anymore. He was beginning to separate from everyone around him. He was no longer the kid who defected. He was evolving into a force the NHL had no blueprint for. When the 1992 season began, Mogilny stepped onto the ice like a player entering his prime. Suddenly, his game carried a new edge. Every shift looked faster, cleaner, and more dangerous. The Sabres had just added the last piece he needed to unlock another level. That piece was Pat LaFontaine, an elite center whose speed and vision matched Mogilny's in a way no one expected. From their first shifts together, the connection felt instant. LaFontaine could place the puck anywhere, and Mogilny could get everywhere. Their line became a storm that teams couldn't prepare for. One would carry the puck wide while the other slipped into open ice. One would draw defenders while the other cut through a gap no one thought existed. It looked smooth, but it was sharp. It looked simple, but it was lethal. As the season unfolded, Mogilny scored in bursts that lifted arenas. He scored on breakaways where he turned defensemen into shadows. He scored from angles that made goalies shake their heads. He scored off passes so quickly that even his teammates needed a moment to notice what just happened. Every night felt like another step towards something historic. Coaches adjusted, defenders tightened gaps, and goalies studied every shot he took. None of it mattered. Mogilny had reached a level where instinct carried him. What set him apart was how little he needed. Even in crowded lanes, he turned half chances into goals, the kind of conversion rate the league rarely saw from a player his age. His pace climbed into a rare territory. He stacked hat tricks throughout the year, each one pushing his pace deeper into territory only a few players had ever reached. Reporters started asking if he could hit numbers only legends had touched. By the end of the season, he had hit 76 goals in 77 games. It tied him with Winnipeg star rookie Teemu Selanne and placed him among the rare players who have ever pushed a season into that territory. Only a handful of players had ever gone higher, and they were the giants of the sport. Mogilny, the underdog from years earlier, now stood beside them. His partnership with LaFontaine became one of the most dangerous duos in the league, piling up points that pushed Buffalo into a strong playoff run. Looking back, people often wonder why Mogilny reached that level in that specific season. Coaches pointed to freedom. He was finally allowed to play with creativity again. Teammates pointed to comfort. He carried the offense with a calm that hadn't been there before. Fans pointed to talent, the kind that made him move in ways no one else on the roster could match. All of those answers were true, but something deeper was happening. The skill he had carried since childhood, the instincts shaped in Soviet hockey, and the determination that brought him across an ocean had finally merged into one unstoppable form. After 76 goals, the truth was undeniable. Mogilny wasn't just a gifted scorer. He became the rare player who could dominate the league from opening night to the final game. His breakout didn't end with the season. It reshaped how the league viewed him and what it expected from every Russian star who followed. Alexander Mogilny's legacy stretches far beyond goals and highlight plays. He was the first Soviet star to defect and truly thrive, and that decision changed the hopes of an entire generation. Suddenly, Russian players could picture a life and a career on the other side. And Mogilny's reach only grew when he stepped into a role no Russian had ever taken on. In 1993, Mogilny became the first Russian captain in NHL history while leading Buffalo during Pat LaFontaine's injury. It was a quiet statement that changed how teams viewed leadership from European players. He didn't talk much, but his teammates trusted him. He earned that C through work, skill, and presence, not by volume. This step made him a symbol for every future Russian star who dreamed of leading a team at the highest level. His story then moved to West Vancouver, where he proved his skill wasn't tied to one system or one city. In the 1995-96 season, he scored 55 goals and 107 points, showing he was still among the best forwards in the league. His next chapter delivered the moment every player dreams about. In 2000, Mogilny joined the New Jersey Devils and finally lifted the Stanley Cup. It completed one of the rarest achievements in hockey. He entered the Triple Gold Club with an Olympic gold from 1988, a World Championship gold from 1989, and now the Cup. Only a small group of players in history have all three. Even after the championship, Mogilny kept finding new ways to evolve. In 2000-2001, he led the Devils in goals. Then, after signing with Toronto, he became their top scorer in 2002-03 and won the Lady Byng Trophy. By the time he retired, Mogilny had 473 goals and 1,032 points in 990 games. He joined the 1,000-point club, earned multiple All-Star team honors, and held scoring records that stood untouched for years. But the numbers alone don't explain his influence. His defection encouraged Sergei Fedorov, Pavel Bure, and a long list of Russian stars to make the same leap. Modern legends like Alex Ovechkin and Yevgeny Malkin credit early pioneers for breaking the fear barrier. Mogilny was at the front of that line. His story came full circle after he stopped playing. As an executive in the KHL with Amur Khabarovsk, he helped guide young players from the same region he once left behind. It showed how far he had traveled, both in life and in the game. Fans pushed hard for his Hall of Fame induction in 2024, calling it long overdue. 1 year later, in 2025, he finally entered the Hockey Hall of Fame. It became a moment that praised both his skill and the courage that changed the sport. He had outrun the KGB, lit the NHL on fire, and opened a path that countless players now follow. The move he made became the model others used when they followed him into the league. If you want the next story that changed the game from the inside out, smash subscribe right now. And if you want a front row seat with our Skates and Scars crew, hit join. We'll save a stall for the real ones, the beauties who actually show up, not just spare parts who lurk and leave. Figure it out.